if the American people don't get involved and don't demand to know things, given what the current set of elected officials in Congress have decided to allow happen and what this administration is willing to say is absolute statement, the people that stand up in defiance, they're losing their jobs. You dare to produce an intelligence assessment that says something unpleasing. And so a lot of people can leave, and they do. I'm much more worried about the people who don't have power, that do need a paycheck, who are going to do what's asked of them because all the other intermediate steps. But ultimately, I think it comes down to the voice that you have shared to get the American people to say, this is not the way it has to happen. Quit listening to the words that are being used and start judging whether the outcome that we're seeing is one that is consistent with your expectation and our collective values. And I think you will come very quickly to say, yeah, we need to send different people.
This is Black Man Spy.
Hi, I'm Malcolm Nance, and this is Black Man Spy. This week's guest is Sue Gordon. She is the 5th Principal Deputy Director of National Intelligence from August 2017 to August 2019. Prior to serving at the DNI, Sue served as the Deputy Director of the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency, the NGA, from 2015 to 2017, helping the director lead the agency and manage the national system of geospatial intelligence. And she did some other things too. Before joining NGIA, she served for 27 years at the CIA. I find it hilarious that she puts that later in her bio. Rising to senior executive positions in each of the agency's 4 directorates of operations, analysis, science and technology, and support. In other words, she ran everything. She is the recipient of numerous government and industry awards, including a Distinguished Intelligence Medal, Distinguished Presidential Rank Award, and the William Webster Award for the leading professional intelligence, as given by the the International Spy Museum, which is where I met her last. Let's welcome Sue Gordon to Black Man Spy. Sue Gordon, welcome to Black Man Spy, the podcast where every once in a very great while I talk to a life hero, and you are one of the biggest heroes in my career. You didn't know me, you didn't see me until we met at the Spy Museum, but everybody knows about Sue Gordon. You ran everything. And I am so glad that I could bring to my listeners and watchers a professional's professional, or I hate the phrase a spy's spy, but and you as a woman career intelligence professional, I will tell you the joke that I told at my first Spy Museum board meeting. When I was brought onto the board, I realized I was the only person of a certain color. And I said at the meeting, oh, I see this, I'm the minority hire. And the shocked, you could feel the shock and tension in the room. I go, I'm a SIG-inter. Everyone on the board's a human person. I was the only SIG-int person from NSA world on there, and the relief.
Oh my God.
I went in there. No, but it's true. Now they have 2 other SIG-inters, so I feel better. But thank you so much for coming.
Oh my gosh.
And, truly tell me first, before I get into a whole series of questions I've been dying to ask you for years now. As a career professional, you were a human intelligence officer at CIA for, I believe, 27 years, right?
No, I was a CIA officer. I only got to do human intelligence for a short period of time late in my career, fell in love with it. It actually is the most profound of disciplines that has shaped how I do this businesswoman thing, but we'll get into that.
Yeah, well, someone's got to make sure there's care, feeding, operations, training, budgetary, and all other things. And then you went over to NGA, National Geospatial Intelligence. How was that transition going from, bombs, guns, and helicopter rides and deep dive analysis and making sure safe houses are stocked to, hey, we got some pictures.
Yeah. Wow. One, so glad to be here. Long-time listener, first-time caller. Plus, this. This is a really small community. We know who each other are, right? And we know who the passion. I'll just say those of us who have a passion for this discipline, whether it was when we were practicing it or now that we're watching it and worry after it. So, I'm delighted to be here. Transition to NGA. It had three aspects to it that were really interesting. Number one, it came right on the heels of having done a study for John Brennan on how we were going to approach cyber for the agency, which I interpreted as how do we create an agency that is going to be successful in a digital environment. I think it was really good, and I think it was so good I had to be voted off the island. Because sometimes I'm always going to do something that's big. And sometimes when that bigness needs to turn into something, you can't have the person that thought of it hanging around. And so it became clear that wasn't going to get to be at the CIA anymore. Mm-hmm. And so when the opportunity for NGA came up, the first thing I thought was, wow, why would anyone want to be anything other than the CIA? That's how profound the mindset is at the CIA.
Wait a minute.
I know, no, seriously, right? So the first one was, I don't know, I've been at the pinnacle of all existence. Do I really want to do something else? And I say that out loud because of my next sentence. I loved NGA. I loved the culture of service within a culture of service. I fell in love with the discipline of geospatial intelligence that puts everything in the context of space and time. And when things are in the context of space and time, they're definitionally more understandable. And then the third was, it happened right at the time that Robert Cardillo was the director, where the commercial space capability was really coming into kind of hefty being. And Robert was really good at understanding that we needed to learn how to succeed in the open. So it took this career CIA officer, dumped her into a new organization, a culture of service that did a really interesting discipline at the time that we recognized that you couldn't stay secret anymore. And it taught me how to talk about what we do openly, which I think is so important. And then I lied. I had a fourth thing that it gave me is the CIA is disproportionately strategic intelligence. When I went to NGA, I learned about combat support.
Right.
And so I would say interesting though it was only 2 years of my career, probably some of the most profound relationships that I've had since have been because I got that opportunity to be part of a combat support agency and to meet the women and men that are military. So it was not what, some achieve greatness, some have greatness thrust upon them. This may have been thrust upon me, but it profoundly changed me. I will say culturally, Malcolm, the way I used to say it is the CIA can change, but it doesn't wanna. And the NGA wanted to change, but it can't because it's just a little more rules-based. And the CIA was, of my career, was less rules-based. So I think there was some natural tension when I first came in, and I'd say, well, let's do this. And everyone would say, well, we can't do that. We'll get in trouble. And I'm like, what is this trouble of which you speak? But just, it was unexpected. It ought to be like a really great lesson for everyone who's listening. And that is, especially if I look back on my whole career, all the great things happened at a moment when I thought, oh, this is the end. And it never was. So I don't know, just take the opportunities before you with an open heart. But NGA was great.
Well, let me tell you, my memoir is in its 17th month of being clear. I don't know what's going on over there. I think it hit the Hegsketh wall. But, you know, it did have four major stakeholders. But one incident which I would like to relate, and how good NGA is in the tactical support realm. I was somewhere doing something, and I really, really needed a 1 to 10,000 scale map of some place that none of you has been to since 1941. And let me tell you, we found more World War II scrap, but it was like, really could use this, and mentioned it. And in like 48 hours, it miraculously appeared. And I was like, oh, this is, you know, where you're like, did somebody hear me? And then I realized I said it out loud in a communique or something. And somebody was like, somebody took it for action. Utterly amazing service. Just shockingly great.
That's what I meant by culture of service within it. You know, we're all kind of a culture of service. If you go to the field view of NGA is universally positive, and everyone has that story. My kids, my daughter and my son-in-law are pilots, and they would have the same thing. When I went to NGA, they're like, oh, NGA, right? Because it's that idea of, you need this, you'll have this, right?
Right.
You need a pallet full of new maps. Here's a pallet. It was wonderful. And it's, I don't know, it stole my heart.
No, that's absolutely amazing. And we are talking about an agency that very few people actually talk about, you know? So, hey, could you explain the difference between NRO and NGA, if any?
Yeah. So you can think a little bit about pedigree, right? So NRO is really the child of when we decided that we needed to see what was going on beyond the physical horizon, and we figured out, because we're amazing scientists, how to toss stuff up in space and be able to see beyond it.
Right.
And the NRO became ultimately an organization that was responsible for the management of those on-orbit assets.
Okay.
Right. Involved in understanding the requirements that are given to them by the operational units, and then turning it into something that becomes a system that then is operated. The NGA is derivative of a couple older organizations. One is the CIA's National Photographic Interpretation Center, and everyone knows of that because there's not a story about the Bay of Pigs and the Cuban Missile Crisis that doesn't go through their work. Right. And so that's imagery interpretation, and then the Defense Mapping Agency, and that is, you know, how you actually locate something on the Earth. And so NGA is really this, how do you understand what's happening, a combination of technical craft of location and analysis of imagery. So the two organizations, and NRO operates the assets and is responsible for the acquisition process of those assets. And NGA is responsible for, you wanted to use it, and what is it that you need?
Okay.
What is great. Right? And so what's interesting is that made tons of sense back in the 60s, because those were entirely different disciplines. I think it's really awesome that they are part of the intelligence community, funded disproportionately by the intelligence community, even though they happen to be combat support agencies, which makes them have the culture of intelligence that is less about the linear process of acquisition and more about how do you get it into operational use. I think it's a really interesting question that I certainly had when I was the principal deputy director of national intelligence, and they have now, is, if you didn't think of this in the 50s and 60s, and you just now thought about overhead imagery and mapping and analysis, would you have to form two separate agencies to do it? Probably not. As the world has turned digital, that distinction between all these agencies is a little less clear. But what they do mission-wise are discrete missions that then, the closer they are together, the better we are at being fast. And now if you throw Space Force into the mix with their tactical intelligence capabilities, you have the potential to be into if you can overcome bureaucratic hurdles.
Crazy. All right.
Crazy.
By the way, for the listeners, that was National Reconnaissance Officer.
Right. Sorry.
So for anyone who's older than me, who's seen the movie Ice Station Zebra, which, by the way, one of my favorites, spooky films, because it's accurate. NRO would be responsible for putting the satellite into space, and NGIA would be catching that canister of film and interpreting it and using it. So
right, exactly. So one of my favorite lines is, "How do you tell the CIA officers in a Tom Clancy movie? They're the ones laughing." But it is every time you see someone.
In the theater, yeah.
Right. Every time you see someone managing an asset, that's the National Reconnaissance Officers, and every time you see someone saying, "Ooh, I think this means that's someone from NGA."
Yeah, and it's, how is it always Jack Ryan? I mean, it's like,
Again.
don't you get, we'll get later on. I actually do this whole shtick about all the things that are accurate in the movies, because we did at the Spy Museum, we had an event where you get to choose a movie that you thought was accurate or inaccurate, and of course we laugh at anything that's Tom Clancy, but mine was Little Drummer Girl, right, from the nice. Diane Keaton version.
Nice.
And there was just so much in it. I was like, I can't find any holes in this movie, But Ice Station Zebra is one of those really early ones that actually, 1966, I think.
Great movie.
Where the submarine operations were all correct, and human intelligence sort of stuck. But the whole discussion of satellite delivery back in the oldie days, when canisters would come down on parachutes and things like that. But I've taken us way off of the stuff I wanted to talk about.
I don't know, but this is so fun, and I was just about to go down the whole thing about the joys of technical intelligence. And yes, human intelligence is lovely because it gives you that holy grail of intent, but technical intelligence, you can see it. And I actually started out my career as a CIA analyst that took National Security Agency telemetry from Russian satellites, and I turned it into English. So
whoa, sorry, wait, hold up there, sister. I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Anyway,
so yeah, no, it's in my bio. They approved it.
Okay, okay. Back in the oldie days. See, if you say "back in the oldie days,"
is that the universal? Love it.
By the way, for anyone who's listening, that's how we tell someone else that, hey, are you sure we should be talking about that?
Sure.
It's like, what are you talking about? I have never heard of this thing, this technical intelligence thing. Yeah. So, well, that is really an old school issue that is still defining us today. So tech int. And which made you not just an analyst, you're a collector too, right? So you would give tasking and stuff like that back to the fort, and you just made a whole bunch of T-branch or telemetry people just angry all day about your demands from up the river. So, but enough about that. I don't want to talk about real things. No, that's not true. I want to talk about something that I think is very important, which is going on today, and it will transition to the discussions that we're having politically today with regards to the intelligence community. But I always start with history. My father, who was 15 when he went into the Navy in World War II, right? Lied about his age, was a massive reader, and was always imposed on me that you must understand the history. History, geography, language, culture of any society that you're with. And since we're talking about intelligence, professionalism, there are an enormous number of books and documents, even films written about women in the U.S. intelligence community. And as a person, as I started from Fort Meade, I'm a cryptologist. Elizabeth Friedman, right, was the mother of U.S. cryptology, and stemming out from that, I came to appreciate the fact that history that we had, whether it was the one article that, if you want to get me, Malcolm Nance, excited about anything, is make a reference to Agent 355, which for those of you who don't know, for the American Revolution, there was a referenced agent by George Washington who was a deep penetration spy in the British camp in Philadelphia. And to this day, I've read CIA studies, I've seen doctoral dissertations. No one knows who Agent 355 is. Wait, Sue, do you know who Agent 355 is? You're just ruining this show for me. But the point is that from the very founding of this nation, we have had men, women of all colors, all ages, who have acted as intelligence collectors, analysts, people who are couriers who risk their lives for the freedom of this country. And as a Philadelphian, it makes me so happy to even know, one, that we still have this giant mystery in U.S. intelligence, but two, that we know it was a female intelligence officer. We know this person had deep contacts with Benedict Arnold and General Clinton. And we have an entire history of these incredible women who have served in the community. I've got some written down here. Everybody, when we talk human, OSS in World War II, Virginia Hall, Julia Child, the French chef, but there were others, Barbara Lauvers, and what's the woman? Gertrude Legerdere, the first OSS woman who was captured. 4,000 women worked in U.S. intelligence in World War II. And moving into the Cold War, and I know you know everybody. Or you've at least seen their.
Because I'm old.
I did not want to be the one to tell you this, but I was just going to ask you, did you know Sandra Grimes personally?
Yes.
I knew it. I knew you were. This is the woman who was on the special task force who identified Aldrich Ames, the top spy in the CIA, who caused many of U.S. intelligence assets to die. And she was an analyst as part of the team with Jeanette Vertefeuille, who captured Aldrich Ames. And, I've seen photos of these people. And I have this shtick that I give where I say, I would recognize none of you in a Walmart or a Target. The people who really keep this country safe would be very, very, how can I put it? You would have no problem seeing them in Cracker Barrel or a Christmas store. So, I found that wonderful when I worked at Fort Meade.
It is wonderful. It is wonderful. And I can't believe this is the first time we're like talking, and it won't be the last because there's just so many points of view we share.
Yeah.
So I started in 1980 with the CIA. I thought that was such a fortuitous time to start because my first line supervisors were the Wizards of Langley and the people that really understood the move to modern intelligence the way we practice it now. So my first bosses were the ones that instilled in me kind of a passion for the mission. Even though the number of professional women was small, the names that I know and got to work with, right from Tish Vida, Donna DeWitt, Bonnie Hirschberg, Sandra Kruzman, Carol Staubach, we don't know these names, but there have always been, as you say, since we first thought about spying, there have been women and an incredibly diverse population who are able to do this. And your point about these are the people that you wouldn't recognize in Walmart, I tell that story even differently. I said, if you knew intelligence officers, they're like your neighbors. They have the same fundamental sensibility about what we're doing. about keeping America safe. So it's not just that they aren't noticeable. It's that they are you, right? They just happen to be driven by this other thing that says, I must participate in keeping us safe. But their mores are much more in common with the average bear, the people you're next to every day. They just happen to have gotten into something that is extraordinary. So that's the first thought on that. And the second one is, um, it kind of jump into a political discussion now. There is no leader that I know that doesn't understand how important diversity is to the accomplishment of any mission. You mentioned how we found Aldrich Ames and what was going on there. We finally figured out, let's bring in some different people. Right? The operations director had been keeping it to itself because it was so horrifying that they were like, we must find this. When they finally figured out to bring in some analysts, some of whom happened to be women, it was like, have you considered this? How about that? They found different things. So this idea of diversity being something other than good is not borne out by any leader who has ever tried to accomplish anything. You need people who think differently, act differently. If they happen to look different, that's one thing, but you just need a diversity. So this idea of diversity somehow turning into something that makes us less, it's just such an untruth from my experience. Right. And I happen to talk about women more than others because women are still a minority. But it is this idea of difference and how we bring difference into decision making and tough problem solving that I think every leader knows makes us stronger. So when you say diversity is our strength, yes, 100% diversity is our strength. It's our strength as a nation. It's our strength as an intelligence community. And the fact that we don't know as many of the stories that we should. I mean, I'm a woman of science and technology. How did I not know the story of the hidden figures? I'm a woman of the space race. How did I not know that? Right?
Yeah.
And so now my drive is I try to tell the story of all the hidden figures in my life because what you and I both know, Malcolm, they're everywhere.
Yeah. And, the way that I define it is that in the military, because I come from the military intelligence side, we have diversity. I need diversity. And I've been in organizations which were stovepipe morons who would not look. I have a famous story. When I came into the Persian Gulf in 1991, I had already been in the Gulf when the Iranians had mined. We were behind the Samuel B. Roberts when they struck a mine, sailed into a minefield. I was just like mine crazy, right? And when I got there in Desert Storm, I started seeing all of these signs of mine laying, just thousands of them. And these staff officers were like, we don't see it. And I go, I just arrived. I have this experience. Maybe you might want to think about this. In the end, they had laid over 6,000 sea mines and almost 1 million landmines. Okay, I think we should all learn this lesson. Diversity of thought, diversity of experience, diversity of opinion, diversity of culture, diversity of language. All of this is called, we used to call this, what do we call this shit? Oh yeah, teamwork.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I mean, the story of the hunt for Osama bin Laden.
Oh yeah.
Again, the women who toiled for 10 years to find this. I mean, it's just, it is one of the most vexing things that comes out of the kind of the current mantra is somehow that diversity isn't good. Oh my gosh, it's good. I've seen it every day. And talent is everywhere. Talent, one of the things I know about you is what a good leader you are. And I bet if you and I sat and talked about our favorite leadership moments, one of mine is when I was given the job, but not the team to do it. What I was given was the team that was available. And you know what we did? The job.
Yes.
Right? You get sucked into thinking that somehow we don't have enough talent. That has not been my experience. My experience is that leaders that know how to use everyone they have find that anything can be accomplished. And I think you and I both are lucky enough to be part of history's, not tooting my horn, tooting the organizations and the nation's horn about what we're able to accomplish by leaders who recognize that just the abundance of talent we have without falling into the trap that thinking that excellence only has one look.
So you came in just after the Stansfield Turner era.
I did. I did. Actually, Stan Turner and my dad were besties in the Navy working for McNamara's systems analysis staff.
Oh.
So I never saw Stansfield Turner as my director of the CIA, but I know him well.
Bullet dodged. Well, yeah. I came in under the Bobby Inman.
Because that would have been horrifying, right?
Oh, yeah, he would have been like, get me a cup of coffee, sweetheart. Yeah. I came in the Bobby Inman stage, he was the mirror opposite of Stansfield Turner. He believed that NSA as an organization needed to be broad, diverse, more technology, more people, and had a female workforce, which was incredible. To make a story very quick, I had this joke I used to make about the little old ladies of the fourth floor at NSA, and I literally had my life saved by 2 women code breakers. And when I went up there to meet them, I thought, oh, some young guy, some hotshot mathematician. They were both in their 60s. And I was like, I love you. You literally saved my ship's life. We were in a missile duel and we knew all about it. And they were like, oh, thanks. People don't come up and talk to us. And I'm like, what's wrong with this world? You shouldn't have to wait for, a meritorious service medal to understand that these people work day in, day out tirelessly. And like you, I can tell you are a lot like me. We love this country so much. And we don't want to see our fellow citizens hurt or harmed by things that we could forewarn you about, which brings me to our problem of today. As you talk about diversity, equality and inclusiveness, which we call teamwork. But my problem now, and why I have such a big mouth, my big Navy chief mouth is always out there shouting, is because the problem I have with the intelligence community and the National Command Authority and their way they are consuming and using our intelligence is that there is a overwhelming, complete loss of integrity here. And integrity is, anyone can have competence, anyone can have character, but if that character is not grounded on personal integrity for love of the game and love of the country, then you're just using things for your own good. What do you think of that?
I'm trying to think of how I'm not going to cry when we talk about this.
It's okay. We love America.
No, it's true, and it's hard to explain how the feeling of responsibility for keeping America safe for democracy isn't an egotistical thing. It's just something you feel to your core. It feels like something that you must do. And I don't know, falling into intelligence when I did and practicing it for 40 years and seeing the numbers of things that didn't happen simply because regular women and men who believed the same as I did made sure that they worked every day to have it not. And seeing that, knowing that, with the exception of 1 or 2 bums that you run across along the way.
Mm-hmm.
I don't recall ever believing that I was working with anyone who believed other than I did about what we were required to do for Mr. and Mrs. America.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, we support and defend the Constitution. We serve a president because it's prescribed by the Constitution. We often consider him, or well, now it's always been a him, our number one customer, but we never thought we were serving a person. We thought we were serving the country, and that gave us room to say hard things,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And because national security and intelligence, particularly, are fundamentally uncertain, in order to deliver something of value, you always must risk that you're wrong. Because if you wait until you know you're right, it's already happened, and you're subject to the whim of that event.
Mm-hmm.
To do that, to be willing to say what you think the data show, even knowing that you might be wrong, must be, and in my experience always was, driven by the responsibility to help good decisions happen, not the responsibility to serve a human, to be perceived as on the right side,
Mm-hmm.
or to shape what I said based on what was preferred. And this move in national security from honoring those people who are able to do just what the moment demands in furtherance of the security of the American people in concert with what the Constitution prescribes, to now, no, I want you to say what I want you to say.
Mm-hmm.
That completely diminishes the value of that craft.
Right.
It doesn't always mean that something bad will happen. And don't be confused that in this move to now cult of personality, that always bad things will happen. No, sometimes they're right. But that is way too small a perspective and too great a risk to set on one person's view. And that's what the national security community and the intelligence community was about. It's to say, yeah, I know what we want to do. Let's take a look for what really is. And so when this shift happened, and I don't know that it's just been in this administration, it's probably been, well, it's always been threatened to happen. That's called politicization that we fight against. But the problem is when you go this way, you're just undermining the value of what those humans deliver. And Malcolm,
Mm-hmm.
you and I are both saps this way, we believe in it. I don't believe in any single product, but I believe in what the professional cadre that does what we have done
Mm-hmm.
is trying to do. When the quest becomes unpure,
Mm-hmm.
the good people won't be able to participate.
Right. Right.
And so you get this double whammy of not only have you diminished the chance to know what is rather than what you prefer, over time, what you do is you drive out the people who believe in the original vision of security. So it's a tough time.
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah, that's a key question that I'm almost afraid to ask. You know, it really is a time of where integrity matters a lot.
It does.
I make this joke that I'm just an old Navy chief. Okay, yeah, but there as a chief, I'm required to, we call it, drop our anchors when we know something is absolutely whatever it is, and I'm not going to change it for you. I'm not malleable on this point. Had a incident, and people always say, Malcolm, you're always bringing up your experience. Had an incident with a 3-star general where I was told an event was happening. I was responsible for for a dozen people to make sure that event, if it happened, it happened. If it doesn't, it doesn't. And I just told him, I go, you're absolutely wrong. He goes, no, Chief. And I go, I own this place. I own this geographic part of the world. It is not happening. And, just when given that, I expect at that point, absent information that none of us don't have, that you may be hiding in your pocket, that you will go along with that. But what I can't have is what I think is happening I'm seeing the edges of where the intelligence Overton window is being pushed. When I worked in counterterrorism my entire career. You come and you try to explain to people in my community that narco-terrorism is anyone on the high seas in the Caribbean. I'm certain, King George III would have been proud as they were hunting down the Caribbean pirates. But this is not a world where the IG, where the general counsels, and where the definition of what it has always been can change because you say so,
Right.
and still make it legal, ethical, and moral for what we're doing. And which is why I have a 3-star admiral, stepping out and saying, as a commander, I cannot carry out these activities.
Yeah, what's going on with those boats with Venezuela is a perfect microcosm, not of a different policy. Listen, we've talked about my age. I'm old. One of the things I've loved about America is we elect somebody new. They come in with a different view of how we should do it. They bring in new policies. That's one of the ways we keep us from going extreme. And it's good. But usually it is policies that have two features. Number one, policies that are simply a different view of how we serve America, right? Same goal, different view of how to get there. And always which are done in accordance with the Constitution of the United States. So I don't know. I can say I have no problem with what the president is effecting in South America. I probably do have a problem with that too, but that's less concerning than the way it's being effected, which has nothing to do with who we are.
Right. And, I hear these moral debates between, they go, oh, well, President Obama, put a hellfire into Anwar al-Awlaki, affirmed terrorist, running the Al-Qaeda organization in the Arabian Peninsula, carried out attacks. We had, we had the Danes, had an agent, Assad, who was literally talking to him every day. This guy was executing a plot to kill American citizens. It had already been reviewed by every IG and general counsel, left, right, and center, and it fell under the authorization of use of military force against Al-Qaeda post 9/11. Pull the trigger, rifle.
Prescribed in a certain area over a certain time with the acknowledgement. And one of the things that I think is so problematic here is, don't tell me this is the most transparent. There is no transparency here. Show us your work. The government, one of the reasons why the government is slow is because the American people, because they give us their treasure and their authority and their trust, that we are responsible to them. And that means we have to be able to assure them that we've done things in a certain manner. Where's that?
Yeah. Well, when you go through this,
go ahead.
You go through this entire process, legal process, with the authorization of use of military force for Anwar al-Awlaki, and, send him to his just desserts, as opposed to, hey, let's go kill them guys in that boat over there.
Exactly. You want that policy, do that in the way we have. And I'm pretty much on the record on this one. Congress, do your jobs. When did you abrogate your responsibility? And one of the things I know from, and from intelligence and from operations, because they're sisters, right? They're two sides of the same coin. That's why it's why special operations and intelligence have always been the best of friends, because it's kind of the same thing. But what we all know is that oversight is really important.
Yes.
Because of the uncertainty, because you're doing it with authorities that have been given you that are special and you want to maintain that trust, and because there's always uncertainty, oversight is super important, especially given, the listeners listening to us are going to say, man, they're motivated. And that's right. Motivation can make you not be as intentional as you need to be. Oversight is super important. Where's the oversight on this? And don't tell me that you haven't gotten briefings. Right. So I think there are like two problems with this. Number one is just all the extra judicial, extra legal things that are being done. But the second thing is, we did have ways that you could still examine it and decide that you were going to do difficult things anyway. And all those are out the window. And now they seem to be just on the whim of someone who wants to do something that they haven't explained very well in terms of how that's in the U.S. interest. They haven't explained very well the authority that they are using to do it. And worst of all, they're doing it at a time that we know that the professional cadre that has always been the bulwark, sorry for stealing their moniker, but always been the bulwark against, or our best chance to not have malaction, is now gone.
Well, I for one, I cannot blame the intelligence community, because I can tell you right now, with regards to Venezuela, for example, operating at the theater level, they're just doing what they do every day, right? Watching airplanes take off, watch airplanes land, watch boats come out. But we've moved on to, and I've written an entire Substack on this, I understand where the current Trump policy comes from on Venezuela. It's the Tom Clancy novel, A Clear and Present Danger. And they think that they are about to now introduce, sanitized special operations forces personnel from where? Not from Colombia, which is now claiming that we are murdering civilians. So you're going to have to do it from an one of our special operations amphibious ship that just happens to be in Trinidad and Tobago right now, or any other number of insertion points. But you can use the intelligence community to give you the answers for a tactical problem, but coming up with this strategic design to see that we have more warships off of Venezuela than we did Yemen and Iran when we were attacking them is going to be a little harder sell for the American public, simply because you can't understand that fentanyl comes from Mexico, 99% of it, and you think these little ponga boats, which anyone can tell you has a range of about 150 miles, depending on how many fuel tanks they have, can get only as far as, the Grenadines. So we have an administration, consumers who, can I be quite honest, they just don't give a fuck what the intelligence community has to tell them other than what they want to hear, which is, can I bloaty up this thing? And then you can say yes. Somebody's pulling a trigger on a drone right now. And I will tell you, in my estimation, it is not the U.S. military.
Yeah, so there are so many, our history, yours and mine, is replete with all the successes we talked about, is errors of judgment. When we were so desperate to do something that we haven't done it according to the thing. I said it is relatively few, and we the system finds out and then tries to make correction. I don't blame intelligence, because if you have someone who's not going to use it, what are you going to do?
Consumers, man.
Right. I think you're doing this. I'm a newbie at a podcast. I think one of the things we have to do is try and have the conversation with the American people in a lexicon that makes sense to them, because all these things actually do matter to them. It all comes down. It will all ripple to Mr. and Mrs. Iowa. And so, but we have gotten so used to just talking to our small circles about the things we understand, that now those same top line conversations can be used as though they're justification, and they're just not. So I think there are different consumers, and one of the things we're trying to do, I'm trying to do, you're trying to do, is to get the American people to see that it matters to them locally. Two, you have a right to be able to understand this, not someone to pat you on the head and say, oh no, I have the authority to do that, I'm doing that, or that it's having this effect without any evidence that that effect is being had whatsoever. So I think it's super important, because if the American people don't get involved and don't demand to know things, given what the current set of elected officials in Congress have decided to allow happen, and what this administration is willing to say is absolute statement without, and even years in my former call, they are former to us, they're still working there. Boy, that's a tough environment. I get it. The people that stand up in defiance, they're losing their jobs.
Yeah.
Right? You dare to produce an intelligence assessment that says something unpleasing. It's not that they bury it, or it's not that they force you to equivocate on your key judgments, is you lose your job. And so a lot of people can leave, and they do. I'm much more worried about the people who don't have power, that do need a paycheck, who are going to do what's asked of them because all the other intermediate steps. But ultimately, I think it comes down to this is, I will put this all on you. It comes down to the voice that you have shared, that you continue to share, that I'm trying to be more articulate on, and to get the American people to say, this is not the way it has to happen.
Right.
Quit listening to the words that are being used and start judging whether the outcome that we're seeing is one that is consistent with your expectation and our collective values. And I think you will come very quickly to say, yeah, we need to send different people.
Yeah. You know, one of the things that I've assessed with regards to these strikes is that they don't care who they're killing. They may have actually tracked some of these panga boats out of these places. The 2 narco subs, okay, clean kills, right? You can't hide a narco sub coming out of Colombia, but you know, the first one that killed 16 people, it's like, whoa, yo, okay, I assess there's too many people on that boat. Okay, you cannot tell me that the payload is drugs when it's a probable boat shuttle from Trinidad and Tobago. And I don't had to have done that mission down there to know that, because I've been on a boat in the Caribbean. Everybody travels by boat. So that
and this idea that somehow rules of engagement are for wimps.
Yeah, well, that's Pete Hexon.
You know, it's just crazy, because I mean, I had children who were over in the Middle East and Afghanistan, and there were rules of engagement of when people run into buildings. If you don't know what's in that building, even if the person running into the building was the person wanting, you didn't shoot. Now, I think that is consistent with our values.
Right. Absolutely.
Right? That is, you want to know more, put more pressure on your intelligence community to know more, but you don't change to say, you know what, now we don't care if we kill the wrong people.
Yeah, well, you know, that comes from a leadership team that has very, very little experience in the field. I know what is in every mud hut in the Middle East. There is at least 2 kids. There is 1 goat. There is a wife who is making tea or bread. And if I can't eyes on them, or the kid and the goats are not out there, I know they're there. That's all the way from Nigeria to, okay, where's China end? Okay, Shanghai. Okay, that's called the developing world. And this is where I talk about that lack of integrity also means that you discount known intelligence. You discount what people have bled and died for. There are divisions divided up by the Middle East, South Asia, North Africa, wherever, for a reason, so that you can go to those experts. Really funny aside. Earlier this year, I went to Greenland. And while I was en route to Greenland, there was this news report that U.S. intelligence had increased its collection, or was ordered to be prepared to increase its collection against Greenland. And I immediately knew what, what shape that this would take. And I was given an interview with Danish television, and they said, well, where do you think they would be getting their intelligence? And I said, from the USAID officer they fired. The most knowledgeable person on all of Greenland for the U.S. government is now on, K Street working as a barista in a Starbucks. So right off the bat, mission failure, right? Somebody can go find an old CIA fact book in a library or buy it for $6 on eBay, and you have just as much information as you would have right now. So how can I put it? This wall, once the consumer decides that intelligence is to be consumed as they see it. And this what led to the WMD failure with predetermined outcomes. It's like, it has to be there, therefore it's there, no matter what, everything be damned. And same thing is happening here in Venezuela. They are on a fentanyl hunt, and someone's child is going to die. An American service member or American service men or woman, and you're going to have to explain to their mom and dad that it was all
Right.
bullshit, a lie, and they fell overboard on a mid-watch chasing a 12-foot panga boat with a 50,000-ton destroyer.
Yeah, totally agree. So we don't talk enough about that. When I talk about, we're not having the conversation with the American people about whether certain activities are in our interests or not, because it is America that pays for it. And particularly the humans, right? Is this worth one life lost? We've never answered that question, and the day will come. We've taught, I want to be really clear, intelligence failures happen. It's one of the reasons why I like oversight, is because I think there are times that we as national security professionals, and remember, at our best, we are not about opinion. We're about the craft that allows you to put these things forward as our best estimate of what is, not what we prefer. But we're also humans, and when faced with a politician, when we think about the Iraq WMD, you got to put it in context of 9/11. So 9/11 happens, and if you're a national security professional, particularly an intelligence professional, the worst thing that has ever happened in your whole life has just happened. You've done what you swore you would never do, is you allowed an attack on our homeland that we were unable to stop. And it doesn't matter how many others you stopped, that was just something. We knew that there was a lot going on, but we just couldn't find it. So when that attack happens, the profound effect that you have on the community, fast forward, we get to Iraq. I can't describe how much less in those years, just a decade after the fall of the Soviet Union, that we knew about countries other than Russia. Like our whole focus for the first 50 years of national security has been Russia. Even when we thought about another country, it was about, are they hosting Russians, right? So we're still relatively new in terms of what we understand about anyone other than Russia. This all happens. We have 9/11 in our rearview mirror, worst thing that's ever happened. We kind of come up with a pick'em of whether he has WMD or not. You're getting pressure from the administration that they need an answer because they too need to avenge this loss.
Right.
And do you think that those humans were going to say one more time, I don't know, I think it could be there, but we can't tell you? Kind of an analog to what we did with 9/11. And the only reason to keep other bad things from happening is when you have enough oversight to say, no, you've got to go back and do your job right, do your job right, do your job right. So it's not that mistakes won't happen, and it isn't that every error is foreseeable. you aren't malfeasant just because you get something wrong. This is a really hard discipline that you and I have participated in over our careers. This is really hard. But it's hard when you don't have pressure to produce a single kind of answer.
Right.
When you add what we're feeling now to the hardness of it, to the diminishment of the professional cadre, to the disruption of the world, which lets us understand it less, it is really likely to become tragic more than once.
Right. Well, and it did not help that we had a White House full of Sovietologists, right? Led by Condoleezza Rice, who famously said, which shocked me, we had a failure of imagination. We could never imagine that somebody would fly an airplane into a building like that. And I thought, boom. Oh, funny you should mention it. I happen to remember the tour at the White House where someone flew an airplane into the White House. I also happen to remember the Japanese kamikaze. I happen to remember the Libyan Air airliner, which was shot down by the Israelis over the Sinai because they thought they had a flying bomb coming to Jerusalem. That was 1981. There were a series of shoot downs, including one that I was involved with, which was Iran Air 655. Over in the southern Arabian Gulf, killed 186 civilians due to a mistake in thinking that the aircraft may be a suicide device or a military aircraft. The lack of imagination sometimes, and I don't want to use this as a pass for all of us in the community, though, is our consumers just aren't smart enough to consume a lot of what we give them.
Oh. So oh my God, we're going to need another show just to talk about that. I will say, but the biggest thing is this is hard anyway. Human nature is human nature. Politicians view intelligence as massively inconvenient. Like we steal their decision space all the time. And boy, it is hard to hold the line when they really need to do something. We're saying, we really don't know, because sometimes you don't know. But again, that is hard on the average day. What's worrisome now is a little less resolve on the community's perspective to be ruthlessly honest about what it has. And in my estimation, a lot less wisdom on the policy side to be open to something inconveniently told at an inconvenient time, and it still needs to be listened to. And those two things, I think, are just slamming together to create a perilous moment for us.
Could we say that this is actually an opportune time for those who are remaining within the intelligence community? We have 19 agencies and sub-agencies and who are out doing the day-to-day job, that this is a really good time to do it, because in my estimation, so long as no one is asking you to lie, flub, cheat, steal, murder, okay, let's scratch that last one, lie, flub, cheat, steal, and use the information which we develop in order to come up with some crazy idea like, invade Lagos, Nigeria in order to get Fulani bandits in the Lake Chad area. Don't know. But I think that a lot of people because people ask me all the time, should I stay in? Should I join? And I would advise them this. Listen, so long as the Director of National Intelligence is chasing 101 Dalmatians, your day job is secure. Really. You really don't. They won't bother you. You're like the kid in the corner who is building Legos and they are out trying to do day trading on their phones. So long as they don't come up to you and ask you to do anything stupid, I think everybody should remain on the job and be as vigilant as possible.
Yeah, you and I would give the same answer. Should you stay? Yes. Yes. There are tons of people. Think about the guy that needs the map.
Yes.
Right. There are tons of people. We think about the president and these issues, but there are tons of people. Yes. Stay on the job. Yes. Pursue it as hard as you can.
But when you do get that request for 25,000 1 to 50,000 scale maps of Caracas. All right. Somebody at some point should go, maybe, I don't know, senior management and the SES should go, this is a stupid fucking idea, right? Just want to let you know, I'll give you your maps.
Yeah, so I love that point because we don't talk about it as much, and that is, this is a time for leadership, and this is a time for leadership just because the world is so disrupted that it can't be what it was. So we need leadership to set a vision. This is a great time for leadership. This is also when leadership can do that job. The line analyst, operator, developer, engineer, when asked to do something by the head of the organization, is going to have a hard time doing anything other than, they're not living in that world, right? To expect them to do it. But leadership matters. And so not only the leaders that are there, I think, have this super opportunity to lead humans that are motivated and to do things that are important. I think this is a great time. Malcolm, I think I said this on Nicole Wallace's show. Man, I would love to be leading the intelligence community right now. I just think there's so much uncertainty. The world is so disrupted. There are so many questions. The craft needs to be refreshed. There's so many things to. I hope every good person who wants to serve their country will come and serve their country. But for the leaders that are in position, you do swear to uphold the Constitution of the United States of America, and you do have that moment where every once in a while you're going to be asked to do something you can't do. Remember what your job is, and that there are a whole bunch of pups behind you that are just trying to do their job, and they don't have the ability to do what you do in terms of, say, we need to ask this question again, or we need to go back at it. And I'm not advocating for extra organizational sets of things. I think unauthorized disclosures are always bad. I'm talking about do your job, and do your job as loudly as you need to do it. And if it turns out you were wrong, maybe you're going to suffer a consequence. But I think Teddy Roosevelt talked about the women and men in the arena. Be one of those. The arena. Be one of those. And leadership is this amazing opportunity and this great responsibility. If you've got that position, prosecute it as well as you can in all domains.
No, that's beautiful. One last question. When I had to make a decision about what I was going to do when I came in the Navy, because as a foregone conclusion, my family's like Navy for forever. I was in Washington Square behind Independence Hall in Philadelphia, and I stumbled on, for the first time, George Washington's statue at the original site of the unknown soldier. And there are like 1,700 Revolutionary War soldiers buried in that park. And they were buried there because they died of disease, and it was also a slave cemetery. And there's a statue there, and above it is written, "Freedom is a light for which many men have died in darkness." And it had an incredibly profound impact on my life. And it's one of the few things I can quote because the words leap out at me. And when I came into the community, I thought, this is where I want to be. These are the people I want to work with, and this is a country I love. If you were having to give a last speech at the farm, and you had to impart the entire breadth of your career, what you feel in your heart that you want them to walk away with, could you come up with something?
Well, damn it, and damn you, because I will never forget that quotation. I think what I would probably say, and this is just going to be thin gruel compared to what you said, would be that we can do anything we set our minds to. Just make sure when you ask your women and men to commit to it, that it is worthy of their lives. because they will follow you. It will be done, and you don't want it to be cheap.
Well, you still can't beat George Washington, but you just made me cry. I'm guy crying.
People, I think that's what you and I feel so profoundly. It's what sustains us so completely. Is that women and men continue to come to serve,
Mhm.
but to be worthy of them requires the leaders to never ask something that isn't.
Mhm.
And that's what we love, and that's what we worry about right now.
Mhm. Amen. Hallelujah, sister. Well, and one last
Me
thing.
too.
No more stars. All right. Let's
None, zero. I've seen too many added.
yeah. So wow, well, we've gone over our allotted time, but I love this conversation with you, and I want you to come back because I know there will be something we will need to discuss at some point.
Well,
And
I'm just better for it. So this is a purely selfish, 100% selfish play. Time in your
well,
presence, sharing thoughts about the country we love.
no.
I don't think there's better time spent. So if you'll have me call,
Okay.
and I'm going to spread the word. Like I knew it. Now I feel exactly what you're contributing. We need more Malcolm Nance.
Oh man, sister, you in a bad way when you need more shouty McShout faces around. But it does not hurt to have somebody who will impart the words that all our intelligence consumers who are screwing up needs to hear, which I like to use quite often, which is, are you fucking kidding me? Hell no.
Go get him, brother. Anyway, this has been a romp,
Thank
and
you.
I'm inspired. I hope the people that listen to us
All right. Well, we're
remember.
going to meet up again. We're going to be offline over at the Spy Museum at some point, and then you're going to drop that Agent 355 bomb on me.
Yeah, because I know it. I do know everything.
I expect you to be. You're Sue Gordon. Okay. Well, thank you so much for coming to this week's Black Man's Spy. Mwah! Love you.
Love you. Talk to you soon, guys.
All right. Bye-bye. I'm not crying. You're crying. Oh, God. For those of you who come and listen to Black Man Spy to get some touch of the decency and heart and care and compassion and integrity in the intelligence community, you have just been given a tour de force. Sue Gordon moved me to tears. I got the guy cries going because we are in a world in which integrity, character, competence, and love of country is being challenged. This person is she is truly a national treasure to the United States. And I am so glad that she would deign to come down from Olympus down to where I am and to talk to all of you. And for those of you who are considering going into the community, who are in the intelligence community, who are maybe feeling challenged as to whether you should remain, I think her last words, as well as those of General George Washington, should be your standing orders. Cruella de Vil is looking for the 101 Dalmatians, but this nation will always need consummate intelligence professionals who can weather the storms and act with integrity and keep this nation safe and our intelligence consumers from making dumb decisions. Wow. Thank you for listening to this week's Black Man Spy. As always, you can find this on Apple and on YouTube on Black Man Spy Podcast. You can find me mainly at malcolmnance.substack.com. That's where I do all of my long form writing and analysis. And on Twitter at Malcolm Nance, on Blue Sky, malcolmnance.bsky. social, and any other places fine podcasts are served. Well, that was an emotional and entertaining podcast. So next week, I will see you on the beach.